Hello, and welcome back to the Thursday Night Kissaten podcast. Thursday Night Kissaten is a podcast that we talk about Japanese TV shows, movies, books, and other pop cultures. We update weekly every Thursday night around 5 p.m. This podcast is written and hosted by me, Cordelia. Hello again, my dear listeners, and welcome back to the Thursday Night Kissaten podcast. I'm your host, Cordelia. How are you all doing? Well, I'm doing okay. The city that I'm living after the huge snowstorm, everything is just melting down, and I think the spring is actually really is coming and greeting us in a distance. Soon it'll get warmer, I'm sure. So after last week's first part, we delved into the Antique Bakery by Fumi Yoshinaga, and one of the most sweetest manga about cake and love and healing. And in the first part, we explore the heart of the story and its delicious of the pastries and charming characters, and how food connected to people across the time and emotions in the manga. But tonight in this episode, we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We'll be talking about the queer representations in the Antique Bakery and how the story stability the queer's relationship without relying on the typical BL stereotype, and how food itself becomes a metaphor for identity and desire, and also self-expressions. And beyond that, we will touch on a little bit the topic that we left from the part 1, why Japanese people are eating cake on the Christmas Eve, and how the Japanese culture, food culture, global things, and why its manga resonate far beyond its settings. So staying cozy and get some tea or coffee, no matter what the time it is, get something warm to drink, and let's start the part 2 of Antique Bakery. One of the most fascinating aspects or perspective of the Antique Bakery is how it stabilizes the queer's relationships without really attaching to a too typical boys love manga format. It's like how they met and then they have the traumas and they heal from each other's, and by talking, by having sex, and all those things. This one, unlike many BL narratives that focus on the romance and the sexual intentions, attraction between the male characters, the Antique Bakery actually presents a more nuanced and realistic part of the queer identity. Here's the thing that I remembered when I was talking to my friends who are queer, actually gays, when I'm bringing up this ideologies about BL's love, boys love, they often tell me that the BL's most people who are queer won't really rate it, especially the gay, because it's too romantic. The real life dating is not just about I fall in love with you, I feel bad that I'm a gay, and and I kiss you and we have sex and then we start talking about our childhood trauma. There's actually more than that. So that's why this manga, Antique Bakery, and also a lot of the mangas that Fumi Yoshinaga that she is trying to tell in her stories, not just the Antique Bakery, but also What Did You Eat Yesterday, is more realistic lives about this kind of queer's lives. Rather than centering the romance part, it's actually explored how the queerness manifests through the emotional intimacy and unspoken bonds, and the ways how people navigate a relationship in the, very dominant heterosexual societies. So let's take Tachibana and Ono, for example, and their dynamic is very complex and shaped by both history and personal growth. Ono is openly gay, and he has a history of heartbreaks. And while Tachibana, who is a straight, has a very complex past with Ono, and dating back to high school when Ono confuses his feeling and was meet the harsh rejections. So this moment had a lasting impact on both of them. For Ono, it reinforced to him the experience of rejections and isolation as a gay man in this very, traditional societies, right? And for Tachibana, it became one of his biggest regrets. So yet, years later, and it happened the story in the manga that they found themselves working together at a bakery. And their relationship, here's the key, relationship in the story isn't just romantic, but it carries layers and unsolved emotions, personal evaluations, and quiet understandings. Is way beyond romance level. It's not just they're actually using their brain to think about I like you, I love you or not. It's more bonded, because instead of framing their connections through a traditional love stories, Yoshinaga sensei actually allows them to rebuild their relationship on different terms. They work together. They have to see each other every day. And showing how the queerness is not just about romance, but it's also about reconciliation and self-acceptance. And the most importantly is the bond beyond the social expectations. They actually end up as a couple in a way more like in the spiritual level. That sounds really cliche, but in a way that because they're healing towards to their friendship or their relationship, friendship is even not the right word to say, more like their relationship, how they actually nurturing and healing, that actually bring their relationship to another level. There is a lot of debatings about Japanese BL story and BL mangas. The most the criticism that I have heard was how that they were just replacing the female characters as a male body by using the shoujo manga's perspective and telling the story, and make us even still stay at a very misogyny level. So that's why the Antique Bakery, and with Yoshinaga sensei, her way of storytelling and her research within the queerness and LGBT communities in the societies, that is more realistic rather than just to replace the female characters with the male body and trying to avoid the part of misogyny. And that's actually the reason why in her stories that it's getting more a sense of equalities and towards a more healthy perspective of the feminism. So the Antique Bakery is actually placed with the BL, it's never fully about how to using the misogyny perspective to view every individual characters. Yoshinaga sensei actually deliberately avoid to reducing the queerness in the manga, and she tries so hard to not just to fitting in her stories, to feed her story to the straight audience. Instead, she presents the queerness as a very integral part of the life. That's why a lot of her mangas is slice of life, because she wants to say that the BL or the gay or LGBT community, they're no different from us. They also have a life to live. And this is important because a lot of very conservative people who are uptight or not kind of homophobic in the society, that they think the people who are having a different sexualities or the way or LGBT communities or even foreigners, they're aliens. They're not eating and sleeping. They don't need to go to bathrooms. They're not human beings. This is actually really embedded hate that in the societies in East Asia, especially in Japan. However, Yoshinaga sensei actually using her work and her manga and her art to tell people that other people are different from us only because they're not heterosexuals or they look different from you. That doesn't mean that they are actually are not human beings. They're living their life as well. There's existing of naturally within the relationships, workplace, and everyday interactions. They are human beings, and it's the same as who we are. A lot of other BL's mangas maybe fail to tell the story like this, but Yoshinaga sensei, she did a really amazing job in most of the manga that she did. And in Antique Bakery, for example, here's the thing that I found what she's trying to pursue. For example, Ono's queerness is never a joke or a phrase. It's not a joke, right? In many older like BL or brain-steamed manga, like gay characters are often being written as a tragic figure, or they have so much trauma in their childhood that they need to be healed. They're so broken. But Ono is not. And here's Ono is neither. He is like a very he's very accomplished, like a chef. He has a career. He has a international recognition and confidence in his sexuality, and he represents everything for his skill and his beauty and his handsomeness. Everything about him he is actually comfortable with, and because he is comfortable with and he is not hiding anything from it, it made this character is extremely strong. And Tachibana's friendship with Ono, or relationship with Ono, is a challenge to toxic masculinity. Right? He starts as a man that burdened by his past mistakes, but grows to respect the value of Ono as a gay, and promoting the intimacy between the men doesn't have to be sexual, and it still can be very meaningful. The friendship, the relationship, the platonic relationship that he ends up have with Ono. And also with Eiji. Eiji is like the youngest guy that's in the story who accepts Ono as intermediate and effortless. Like, unlike all the other characters who treat Ono sexually as a defending as like a threat or something, Eiji just simply see him as a mentor and a friend. They are human, they have skills, and they're amazing, accomplished with whatever they're doing. So this challenges ideas that queer people must prove themselves, right? Must prove their identity, must prove who they are. Not just to the people who are queer in the societies right now, that in a lot of places that I lived, if you are queer and you are not from here, not from local, you're a foreigner, you're different, you always constantly be asked to approve yourself. But Eiji's relationship with Ono, no need Ono to prove anything that themselves and to be accepted. This is a huge move, to be honest. That's why this manga just so natural. It's because this is actually a part for the love and for the recognitions, and for that it can be healed and to find a sense of comfort whoever is reading the manga. And I remember that we talked a little bit in the What Did You Eat Yesterday's episodes, that how actually males cooking is a queer thing. It's not like a heterosexual society would accept, but how Yoshinaga sensei actually uses all the time to tell the story, and actually the food in her manga as a space for queerness. So the same for the Antique Bakery, that beyond the characters themselves, Antique Bakery also queer space through the food. You can see this is a big deal. I did not notice how it was so common to have a husband or a dad or father cook at home. That's normally how like in China we grew up with, and I have like friends, their partner like cooking at home all the time. That just like here in North America it's not a big deal, but apparently that was a big deal in Japan. I think now it's getting less and less important, but like in the past, where the manga was first published in 1994, was actually a huge thing. And the act of baking and sharing food becomes a metaphor for love in this manga, and it also tells identity and acceptance. So the bakery itself is a space like where people, regardless of the gender, sexuality, or their background, and find the comfort and connections. And the space as the bakery itself offers a real safe havens in a world that is often demands, not demands, but very misogyny and very conservative. And that's why for Ono the chef, like baking is a form of self-expression and like a way to channel his emotions into something beautiful. Right? Like as a gay man himself, like who has been face rejections all the time, but the kitchen itself has become a sanctuary, like a heaven for him, like a place where his talent speaks louder than the social rejections. he makes things beautiful, and through the food he is able to communicate with his passion, his love, and his longings, and then of always like meant to be harder to express this openly to his personal life. He found his safe space in the kitchen and made all this, the love that he has, into this beautiful shapes of cakes, and to give it to people, and to heal people, and to pass the love and cares. And likewise, that's why the customer who come to the antique bakeries bring with them their own quiet stories, also of longing, loves, and desires. Eating cakes is really satisfying, like eating carbs. Carbs really give the comfort to the belly. I don't know why. Every time when I'm sad, I think the most food that I want to eat is carbs. A lot of people are talking something: when you're sad, eat a cake. When you're sad, eat chocolate. When you're sad, eat something sweet. It became like such a social norm things to most to people. And, and this, for the, the lonely salaryman that in the stories are treating himself to a slice of cake is to the older hostess, and also to another hostess in the story that when they were mourning and thinking about didn't want to face the rejections and the loss in the past, the bakery became a space for people. They actually came in to heal and to eat this beautiful stuff, and to escape from the social expectations. They're escaping. A lot of time that people have eating disorders, no means to offense, but that's the reason why, because people haven't found their longing yet, and the food actually somehow is really comforting. In the manga, it was literally shows that, like, I read the people actually, they think the food is actually shapes of love, and I end up eating a lot with the food that sometimes is even harm for them. But in the antique bakery, that is just a space for heaven and a space waiting for hell. And the food is actually, in this sense, became a deeply, deeply intertwined with the queer identity. Again, because in the norm of the society back in Japan, that street male not supposed to cook. And there's a way to nurture, but this is actually, because this is something that Yoshinaga sensei trying to build in her worldview with her work, that food is actually a way to nurture oneself and others, and to communicate the emotions without words. And also to carve out of the space where the queerness is simply just a part of love. It's in food, and food is part of the love, and what's wrong with it, right? And rather than something that must be explained and justified, and then to be approved over and over and over again. But if we have to summarize the queer narrative beyond the romance in this manga, Antique Bakery, I think Antique Bakery definitely challenges the idea that queer story must be always centered in romance or tragedy. I really against the ideas about a tragedy, because why a queer people has to suffer? Honestly, really, I know that we are suffering. I know that we are facing a harder life than other people, but why we have to always focus on that? Why nobody talk about after the tragedy how we can heal them? This is something that I found really annoying, is in a lot of like males gaze and males eyes and males writers and males creators world, that the feminine, not just female, LGBT, and the feminine part, the queer part of people has to experience something so tragic, either get themselves lost their body control of their body or lost control of their mind, and waiting for someone to come and to save them. What if they don't need to be saved and they can save themselves? Like Ono, the chef, he baked and he was so successful and he healed himself. Why this is not allowed, right? So I think the reason why Antique Bakery is so successful and it was a great manga series is because instead of it present the diverse and layers of portrayals of queerness, it's literally just showing it exists in anywhere in the daily life, like friendships and workplaces and acts of creation. They don't need to be saved. And it really reminds us at Antique Bakery that the queerness is not just about love stories, it's about a space that we build, and the food and things, emotions that we can share, and the ways we support and understand each other. And then to heal from their own skills and their own creations. I think that's why this manga draw a really important space in the BL manga world. It's actually really worth we reread it over and over again, and no wonder there are so many other type of media's adaptation there's already. There were so many movies, and I think there's 2 movies or like 1 TV show was exist about it, and to be honest, it's really fun to watch them as well because the actors are really good looking. I would definitely recommend, if you can find the way on the channel, to watch them, give a try. Besides reading mangas, all the other type of adaptations are kind of very success at the same time. And let's talk a little bit about Japanese food culture and the symbolism of the bakeries. So in Japan, the food is more than just food. It says so much. It was because Japan was such a small island and the resources was so not flourished. Eating food eating mostly being portrayed as a ceremony. It's deeply tied to the memories, emotions, and showing appreciation level of things. Very spiritual, to be honest. So the food are often as a way to, expresses the feelings that the words cannot be fully expressed and shows appreciation and love. And this is especially true for the sweets and bakeries. Okay, because the French style bakeries which was centered, in this manga, the antique bakeries holds a very unique place in Japanese food culture. Well, Japan has been the rich history of wagashi, right? Like the traditional Japanese sweets. And the Western style desserts, particularly the French style, became popular in the 20th century, especially after the Second World War. Because Japan had no food really at that time, American and other European countries donated all the flavors, right? The bread, flours, and to Japan, which is not very connected to Japanese diet. Japanese diet was most likely connected with the rice. So start from there, having flours and to make those kind of fusion food with something like a bread and pastry and bakeries is a very luxury and a very, very personal memories with the one generations and the generation after. And then somehow this is something very special in everyday's life. Yogashi versus wagashi. Wagashi is the Japanese traditional sweets, and yogashi is the Western style of dessert and sweets. It was tapped into a very significant culture things, and that's why in this manga that using cake as a metaphor is actually for personal emotional nourishment. It means a lot. And also because the yogashi is always more expensive, it's not hard to buy anymore, but it's more pricey. It says more about when and how to eat them. So give you some examples here. I hope I make it sense here that, for example, in the manga, cake is tied to the major emotional moments. Again, eating a cake is always for some special situation of life. So the customers come to visit an antique bakery not just to buy the sweets, but to mark significant events, birthday celebrations, and even heartbreaks and some loss. So the bakery becomes a place where people to seek for comfort, closure especially, or for a fresh start. And also food is as the language of the care and connections. Unlike the dramatic confessions or the grand romantic gestures like, this is something so special. But in antique bakery, the love and cares are often shown through food. And this is because of Ono's. His craft shift skills in his bakery, and then Eiji enthusiasm in learning the art of baking. So even Tachibana growing like appreciation of the work of the sweets because the heart and the energy that Ono have been putting into the food. And also the cake is just like an everyday thing that in many cultures the dessert are served for special occasions, but in antique bakery they actually have the cake is for every day. That's someone being so inclusive and equality, and that they actually allow people to enjoy it every time, every day by anyone. It actually reflects the growing shifts in the modern Japanese culture, where the Western bakery was so important, so expensive, not important but so expensive, hard to buy, and to become a more like a small ingredients or part of the life. rather than just like a weird lecture. So that's, you can see the changes, because 1994, what is that? Was the Japan's actual economy boost, right? It was something so special to something that every day was being enjoyable, which is actually show the social changes as well. And that actually come to a thing that why Japanese people are eating cake for the Christmas. For the research that I have done, so Christmas arrives in Japan in 16th century and with the Christian missionaries, and which wasn't until the 20th century that it began to take on a life of its own in Japan society. Unlike the West, where Christmas is often religious or family-centered holiday, Japan actually transformed into a celebration of romance and joy. Anything can be. Most of the Western holidays in East Asia is being portrayed as a Valentine's Day, and by the mid of the 1900s, the Christmas had become like commercial and cultural phenomenons on the Christmas cake that was being, the heart of it. So the traditions of eating the cake on Christmas Eve isn't just rooted in the Asian customs of the religious symbolizations that are based on my research. Instead, that's actually a product of a marketing and cultural adaptation. It's very similar to what and how the Coca-Cola did to Christmas in the West. In the 1970s, Japanese, I think the company called Fujiya actually began promoting Christmas cake as a must-have holiday treat. And this cake especially is light spongy cakes and topped with the whipped creams and strawberries. So we're actually marketed to the perfect way to celebrate the season. So I think, still this is part of the commercial effect like Coca-Cola in the West. And still it was until today. And then that's why until today, Japan, because it's not that hard to buy anymore, the Western food, they can even just order the cake in a convenience store, and became that handy and easy to get. And we talk about the emotional power of the food in the global concept. Food is often one of the most intimate and nostalgic aspects of the culture, and because also in Yoshinaga Sensei's work, that the food is a form of healing communications. Sometimes, even in the what did you eat yesterday, right? They don't even need to say that I love you, but all the food that Shiro made, it was all within the food and for Kenji. So that's just something that resonates across the culture. Food can be a bridge, connect with the past and present. And that's how actually was burdened by in the manga, the Tachibana was expecting his love of the pastries was actually harbored as the burden trauma from the childhood and tied to his own bad experience in his childhood, right? And also the food is a career-coded space for saving and like a safe haven for the people who want to enjoy some delicious food and find the space. And also it shares food as a form of silent communications. Sharing is big. Serving and sharing a cake is actually carry deep emotional weight. That is something about celebrating the moment or sharing the sad moment or actually the emotion within between. I think through the two parts of the deeply dive about the antique bakery, the reason why this is so popular and draw very important parts of the BL manga across the border with the global audience is definitely because, on the universal human experience. One is about a search for belonging, food, whether it's through the friendships, relationships, work, or food, and every characters that in the antique bakery is searching for the sense of purpose and connection. And somehow that they achieved it in different style, in a different shape of definition of the relationships. And also is the interactions of food and identity. Cross-culture, that food plays a major role in the shaping identity, whether it's the recipes passed down from the generations or a comfort food that we turn into the times or need. Yoshinaga really knows the importance of it, and her work taps into this universal relationship between food and also the self-expressions. This is the key here. Ono, that chef, with himself and his self-expressions in food making. Also Shilo in What Did You Eat Yesterday? And also another one is breaking the gender and social norm. I know it's not a thing anymore. Well, still kind of a thing in some weird parts of the world. But still, like, the manga challenges traditional expectation at that time in the early 1990s. And it's about this against misogyniness and also, having this more generalized of a queerness in this normal life societies, and also encourage of emotional vulnerabilities. That's why the manga is offering a refreshing take on the male's relationships and personal growth. Sometimes we need to go to look inward and find that spot for vulnerabilities and looking for the space that allowed us to heal that part, which is important. Another one is the healing power of everyday rituals. Healing doesn't have to happen at the therapist sessions weekly or monthly. It can be actually happen every day, right? Like whether it's drinking a cup of tea or baking a cake or simply just sharing a meal with a friend. Antique Bakery highlights that beauty is in small everyday moments. I think that's also the reason why slice of life styled and genres of work got so popular now, is people really got to know that the healing is actually in the beauty of small and everyday moments, and reminding us the joy and the healing can be found from simplest things. It doesn't have to be something expensive. It doesn't have to be the most of the time that we spend with a therapist. Even open the window, open the curtain, deeply inhale the first fresh breath of the morning. Is healing. So I think at the end that the Antique Bakery isn't just about cake, right? It's about how food connects us. It's about how it reflects our identities, and it's actually created space for love and memories. And also that's across the culture. Thank you again for listening to this episodes of Thursday Night Kissaten. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And if you have read the Antique Bakery in the past, and we would love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comments and anywhere you find this podcast, and share your favorite moments with us and the whole team. Until next time, stay warm, stay cozy. The spring is coming, so treat yourself something nice and go out just a little bit more. Have a good night.